Well, we're going live a few minutes early, actually, 3 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes early. Well, we're going live. And we are now live. A few minutes early.
We're now getting an echo.
Three. There we go. That should have managed that. Go. Yep. There we go.
You all set?
I am.
Okay. Jacqueline, I don't know if you can hear me, but it's wonderful to have you here.
Definitely great.
So we can't really start because Brent is not here yet.
No, and we're still a minute out. So
Okay.
he's got a minute to get here. Well,
Okay.
I'll give him 2 or 3 because somebody who's been on the BDE almost as often as I have been for the last 6 years.
True.
That is worth giving away to.
Did he start with you?
No, he didn't exactly, but he did start coming on the Blair Dunkley experience in the first year that it was on, not the first launch, but
Because
very
I know
close.
I was there the first year as well. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Did you start in 2018?
No, I didn't. I started before then.
Oh, then I
So,
was not part
well,
of the
okay,
first year.
so I thought I started in 2017.
Okay.
So anyway, not absolutely 100%.
I was a 2018er, so.
Oh, okay.
So Leslie, how are you tonight?
Good. Just the weather is dark and dreary today in
Oh, very much.
Edmonton, and
Very much here too.
we're
Well,
supposed to get rain all day tomorrow, but the sun is coming back on Thursday.
good,
This
good.
we had clouds and rain off and on all
Clouds.
day. It's still raining. So, Jane, how are you today? Miss Jane, can you hear me?
Oh, hi. Sorry, I'm doing my thing.
Oh, you're doing your thing. Okay.
Yeah, my background stuff, trying to get that set up
Okay.
Yep.
I like your
so
quilt
that
though.
it shows up on the video.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Looks like Tim and Becky
I'm good. I've been
almost
on my
here.
computer all day, and so my eyes a little twitchy, but I took Blair's suggestion, and
Okay.
there we go. That's today's.
Nice. Okay. Hey, welcome, Tim and Becky.
Yep.
Anyway, I
Christy
hired a new
Christy.
a new
Good to see you,
consultant.
Christy.
Sorry, Jane, what were you saying?
I took your advice. I hired a new consultant and spent all day scanning stuff in and
Nice.
sending it out to him so that it's not on my list of things to do.
Woohoo!
Hey, Brent. Good
Hello.
to see you.
Well, we can officially get started.
We can officially get started.
There we go.
So,
Hey, Blair, did you
Yes.
get my text?
I did, and I tried calling the guy, and I didn't get a call back yet.
Okay, I know he's got a bunch of meetings because it's coming, like everything's coming up, so he's got
I'm sure it is.
quite going on. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, all right. Just wanted to know if you got it.
Yep. And Shane's jumping in. Christy's already here. Hey, Christy. Your lovely husband is showing up.
hey, Shane. Glad you could join us. So, Blair, if we are okay to start, hand it
We
over to
are.
Becky.
All
Take
right.
it away.
Welcome everybody to tonight's BDE. Before we get going, just want to give a couple announcements. For those of you who've been with us for a bit, you know that Blair is doing an amazing opportunity to get a study guide where we can go deeper on the mind models. It's his insider notes where you can get all historical and ongoing notes from the BDE experience, starting with episode 318. If you're new with us, it's a great opportunity, especially because we are about our fourth session into a reboot series where we're going over some of the foundational mind models and going deeper. So definitely a great opportunity to get your hands on the YouTube or the study guide. If you're on YouTube, you can go to blairdunkley.com/BDE-insider-notes and get it there. And then Jane has popped it in here in the chat for those of us online who have not got that yet. Please make sure you do so. Today, you guys, is the 345th episode of the Blair Dunkley Experience, where we discuss mind models. Kind of crazy that we've gone this far in and that we're in the 345, which is pretty cool. For us, mind models, just to fill you in, mind models are a collection of extensively tested thought frameworks, skills, and behaviors that enable people to transform their lives intentionally. Your host for this evening is Blair Dunkley, the creator of mind models. We are Tim and Becky Graff, your co-hosts and certified mind model coaches, along with the amazing Patty McClurg. She's going to be sharing some awesome stuff with us today. The BDE is Blair's free gift to you and is an opportunity to learn and experience and practice mind models in a safe, real-world environment. Mind models have helped Tim and I in every area of our lives, not only in business, but personally, resolving an 8-year issue in our marriage within a couple of hours, and the navigation of grief and PTSD from a tragic accident in 2020, where we lost both of our young daughters. Mind models have allowed us to be more effective and increase our capacities and speed of recovery without traditional counseling, and we're super stoked to have you guys all with us tonight. We look forward to learning with you and welcome you to the BDE. If you're on YouTube, please make sure that you comment, like, and subscribe. And again, we're here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Mountain and 9 p.m. Eastern. With that, turn it over to you for leftovers, Patty.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything that came up for you during the week? Anything on memory issues or safety versus comfort? Anything that new ideas, new thoughts, questions, anything from the last couple of episodes with the reboot? Going once, going twice. Okay, Tim, how about our new stuff today?
All right. Okay, so with that, we are diving into, as Becky mentioned, I believe this is the fourth of our reboot series. And the new material that we're going to be going over tonight is taking a deeper dive into a mind model that Blair created called Ask versus Tell. And this is a very foundational mind model and is a base for a lot of what mind models actually are. And so the first question that I want to pose to everyone is, what is the function of a question? And I'm actually going to pose that question to Christy. What is the function of a question, Christy?
That you're curious about what the person's when you're asking a question, you're curious about whatever your question is. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It
Okay.
does. So it opens the person asking the question. What I took from what you just shared is the
Yeah.
person asking the question. It opens their mind for curiosity of another.
Yeah.
Was that accurate? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Leslie, when you think about what is the function of a question?
To gain information.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So functionally, when we ask a question, we are looking a lot of times for the gathering of information. Love that. Brent, anything to add?
I was looking for something, so I am going to think here for a second.
The question that is
Oh,
posed,
clarity.
what is the function of the question or of a question?
I mean, I think you're searching for clarity, and understanding. So that may be part of it.
So can I ask you a question, Brent?
Yes.
What came up for you when I asked you that question? What happened? What was going on in your head?
Well, it's focus as well. Like brings attention to the now as
Okay.
what's coming. Like what's the question? You know, you ask the question, so I focus on what's the question? What's the question? What's coming up? What's next?
Okay.
Yeah. So whatever was going on was like it stopped and focus was brought to the question.
So it's when a question is asked, it's a way of, as you mentioned, bringing someone into the present, but it also sets certain parameters
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
with the
Parameters
question.
for answers for what the answers would be. Yeah.
Okay. So,
Mhm.
okay.
So curious, how many people need to be present for a question to be effective?
Mm.
Shane, what do you think?
Well, I'm gonna say one. I mean, you can ask yourself a question. So one.
Cool. So really, questions have a very wide yet specific function. Is that reasonable to say?
Yeah.
How do you perceive your own personal relationship with questions on a daily basis, Shane?
Oh, depends on if I'm talking to myself or if I'm talking to Chrissy or yeah. I mean, there's yeah. Uh,
Well, in the context of ask versus tell, which do you find yourself doing more? I guess with yourself.
I tell a lot more than I ask, both myself and Christy.
Fair
I
ball.
still kept to myself. I just literally before the call started, I caught myself asking Christy, "Why would you do that?"
So
Not a good question.
well, so to that point, what was that kind of question? It was a question. Well, but was it really a question?
No, it would be judgment. I mean, it would be, yeah. I mean, yeah. Why would you do that? That ain't gonna work. Yeah.
So for I was going to say with it, since we're going back to the reboot of all of this, how come that doesn't work, Shane, functionally?
Or more, what causes it not to work?
Thank you, Blair.
Well, because it pissed Christy off. That's why.
Well, yeah, but that's
That's outcome
the
related.
result of the ineffectiveness of it. So,
Yes, because it came across as judgy. It came across as I don't know about threatening, but it came across as demeaning.
yeah,
That's not the way I wanted it done, and so that really came out in that why question.
it does, and it sort of comes out in three ways. One of which is effective, and the other two not so effective.
Not effective at all. The
Yeah,
way
so
it came out, the way it came out of my mouth was not effective.
right. So when you do it in a way that's ineffective, it's going to be a prove like you're probably likely trying to prove something or make a position or both of those.
It was both.
Yeah, but it's not enabling curiosity. It's stifling curiosity. Although you can claim you asked the question, were you actually curious? Or was it a disguised tell?
It was 100% disguised tell.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to watch that.
You're muted, hon. Go ahead and say it.
I was just being sassy. I said, yes, you do want to watch that, Shane.
Was that an ask or a tell, Krista?
That
Yeah.
was definitely a tell for future references.
Yes.
So what does telling do? We kind of touched on it here a little bit. Well, Blair brought up a few things that telling does as he was sharing, but what does telling do? Jane?
It can definitely bring up the person you're talking to's defenses. It puts up um, a it can put up a wall. It can put up kind of a fight mode. It can bring all sorts of reactions that are not effective
Mhm.
because they're feeling attacked. They're feeling judged. They're feeling.
Under what circumstances do people not feel attacked or judged when
If
you're
you
telling?
if you when you're telling,
Yeah.
well, if you Leslie's got his hand up.
Yeah, go
If
for
it's
it.
if it's an instructional situation,
That's one. What's another one? Because there's a few of these.
Fill in.
Yeah. Well, and fill in is may or may not be instructional, but what does a fill in do? Well, Shane, you muted again.
A fill in. A fill in can ignite curiosity. It
Exactly.
can. Yeah.
So in and of itself, a tell is not necessarily ineffective. So I don't want people to think that telling is 100% of the time ineffective. But go ahead.
Claire,
But
would it be reasonable to say that when somebody asks another person a question and they respond, their response is the person telling them what they think or they feel or their experience? So
Correct.
it's
And
informational.
exactly, and that's an answer.
Mhm.
So we need questions and we need answers. However, sometimes we also need information. So, like if you're about to drive off a cliff and somebody says, put on the brakes, that's not a question. They don't
No.
have time to say, are you planning on stopping in the next 50 feet? As
Have you
you're,
realized your speed? Have you realized that the terrain is drastically declining in the
Yeah.
next feet?
Are you
Yeah.
aware that there looks to be a drop off?
or just stop,
Or even to start with, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that when you're holding on to the handle or you're at your feet pressed or after? No, just kidding.
Well, it's hopefully you've packed a parachute and it's time to pull the ripcord.
That's standard gear, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So circling back to questions, okay. We've talked a little bit about, questions, what they do, but really, what is the purpose? What are some of the main purposes in asking questions? How do you use it? Jane? When you
I
ask
was thinking, did you say Shane or Jane?
Jane with a J.
Well, for me, a lot of times it's to clarify what's going on or what's being asked, because I may or may not understand or heard the whole statement.
Hmm.
So to clarify, and I'm going to bring one more, or would you be more specific? Because that's kind of a broad, subject, and I could give you 8 answers, and I don't know if you want to listen to all that.
Well,
that's
but could you be more specific is technically a question. What question?
Yes,
So what do
but that's where I would go with that is would you be more specific, or you know, would you clarify what it is you're saying, because I didn't understand the question.
Right.
Those are two questions I might come back with.
Mm-hmm.
because you're seeking what when you ask those specifically?
Oh, additional information, or clarified information, a clear information. Cat, don't get up there.
What about for you, Patty?
Purpose for asking a question. there's so many things.
Yeah.
Sometimes I use questions to ask for help, to create a connection with a person, to learn what I might not know. One of my favorite questions is to say, you know, what is it that you think I need to know that I don't know enough to ask? So it's like, what would you tell me if I knew what to ask? What would you say? What am I missing that I don't know that I'm missing? And I get some fascinating responses to those things.
Almost to me, when you pose that, it almost sounds like a next, or maybe I'm reaching here, but it almost sounds like a next level of curiosity, which is actually pretty cool. At least that's what comes up for me when you ask that question. It's like taking curiosity to another level.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I use that sometimes you know, with people that I don't know well, or I'm
Mhm.
just getting to know. What would you like me to know that I don't know enough to ask, or about a situation or a project, or I'm attempting to learn, like with, attempting to purchase a product and I'm getting information and I'm asking all my questions. And there's so much that I don't know that I am sure I'm missing something. So I just ask, please tell me what I'm missing. What am I missing here?
And also, I hear the general to specific in that as well. There's
Yeah.
that next level of curiosity that I mentioned, but it's also kind of taking that level of curiosity and general to specific and wrapping it in a nice question to get right to that specific point without, because as you mentioned, it's like you can ask a bunch of questions and eventually get there, or you can open I want to say like that portal or that part of their brain and just get right in there to begin with. And so, yeah, it sounds highly effective to me with that line of questioning.
Thank you. It has been. And I find all kinds of interesting responses that truly are things I would never have gotten around to asking because they wouldn't have crossed my mind.
So we've
Absolutely.
talked about questions. So this is ask versus tell. So I'm curious, you guys, what's the purpose of telling? We've talked about a few things in snippets, but what's the purpose of telling? And first off, and then, well, we'll go with that question first. I'm stacking tonight. Leslie, what would be the purpose in telling, or some purposes?
To give direction, to give information to give instruction. I know I said instruction earlier, but yeah, it's to get information across maybe more efficiently than going through a conversation, to be clear and succinct. Because sometimes you need to be clear and succinct to get avoid wandering minds.
Squirrel syndrome that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about telling, what's the difference between telling, a fill-in, or a share? Christy, what do you think? Is there a difference?
I mean, I kind of, for me, like telling, allows me to set some boundaries, and then there's no Like, then I don't assume that I can just share with you with that. So that could kind of, relate to a fill-in if it's getting close and I didn't make those clear. And then what was the other one you said?
So telling versus fill in versus share.
Share. And then sharing, is kind of my perspective or mine. So it's not necessarily saying I'm right, you're wrong, or vice versa, just where I'm at.
I really like one of the things that Christy said that I've been sitting here thinking about, which is she talked about telling, kind of letting people know where she's at, setting some boundaries, that kind of thing. One of the purposes for telling is to control. And there are a lot of situations that's entirely appropriate and not even judgmental. I'm thinking, when I worked in the hospital, and I used to work in a neonatal intensive care unit. And, if a child was doing poorly, somebody is telling, somebody's saying, get me this, do this, I want this. It's like there's a person in charge. And Jane put in the chat to set authority. There are times when I'll walk out in the morning and I know that I'm not in a really awesome place, and I will announce to my family, I feel grumpy today. Beware. So I have set the context for my day so that I have purchased with that statement space to be able to make the transition that I need to make internally, that I can't make necessarily all the time fast enough to not spray people with my grumpiness. So I just make that announcement. When my grandchildren are here and they decide that they're going to take a flying leap off the back of the sofa, I am telling them, don't jump off the furniture that way at grandma's house. Those are all tells, but they all have a function, which is a measure of control. It's not just judgment. So not all tells are judgment, not all tells. I like what Blair said, that we don't want to give the impression that tell is always a bad thing. It has its role, it has its function. Anyway, just wanted to add that.
Well, and I love that you shared that, Patty, because that's also one of the things that Becky and I do with each other as well, is we have learned through being married over these last 17 years that when we're both emotional, we do not work well with each other.
It's oil and water.
And so very similarly, we have, we announce, today is an emotional day for me. And, and a lot of times it's followed up with, I'm just letting you know, I'm emotional today. Where are you? And if we're both in that space, and so just announcing that where we are emotionally can help diffuse right off the bat, if you will, a lot of potential issues for the day. I find that very helpful. I am curious, Blair, when we get to fill in and share, I think I'm a little fuzzy on the difference between a fill in and a share. Can you help clarify?
Sure. Well, for me, filling in it can be similar, but generally filling in is with information the other person doesn't already have, usually directed towards the other person. Now, a share fills in the other party with information they don't have, but it's usually just about me. I'm sharing a perspective, a point of view, a personal statement or information. But the fill in, share always imbues a sense of personal.
Okay.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
like it's personal for me. I'm sharing.
Okay.
And fill in is more informational, more tends to be more factual, tends to be more related to the present moment.
One thing that just came up for me as you're talking, Blair, and I'm curious your thoughts on it,
Sure.
is a tell seems to be, to me, or at least my experience with telling, comes kind of a reaction. Something happens, things come out. Versus fill in and share it requires a bit more intentionality. And with
Absolutely
and
true.
I'm going to think about this, and then I, ask for permission or think about knowing your audience. Okay, I'm going to share something, those pieces. So for me, that was one layer that came up as you were talking about the three of those. Is tell seems to be a bit more reactive. It just comes out versus fill in and share being a
It
little bit more.
is more reactive, but it can also be well practiced because people will give instructions, like security people, police will just give the order.
First responders
Exactly.
or
They know what,
military.
that's right. All of those will be tells in those situations very quickly. They know it's rehearsed practically, it's scripted functionally, but a share tends to be more unscripted and personalized.
Thank you for that, Blair. That actually, it's a lot to what we were just talking about with
Yeah.
my share my emotions, what Patty was sharing. Those are more of the share than the actual fill in. So,
Correct.
yeah, that distinction makes sense.
However, you can frame it to soften it as, do you mind if I fill you in? Like, or do you mind if I share with you? Just setting that up as a question and the person then, so that you can get into alignment with the other person without pissing the other person off. The really weird thing here is when I help people with fill in and asking for permission to fill in, they can say exactly the same stuff, virtually in the same tone, and get 100% different response because you've asked permission first.
Mhm.
Yep. So just sharing.
So Blair, asking permission then. Asking permission. I'm thinking, what does that do? What does that do to the brain of someone when you're asking them permission?
A lot.
What does that do to their brain?
Well, let's think about this in terms of telling first instead of asking permission. When somebody is just telling their stuff, they're nattering on about their thing, and it's beyond the point where that individual is fully focused on that information. What happens is it gets erased very quickly.
The 7-second
Yeah,
eraser that follows.
that's right. What part of the memory is that, Patty?
That's before it goes deeply into declarative, but it's just that part that wants to keep our brain from getting overloaded with
Right.
things it can't use
Okay. It doesn't
before
have a
it goes
distinct
into a
name.
declarative memory.
Oh, okay. Before it goes into
Yes.
declarative
Mhm.
memory.
Yep,
Okay.
it's before working memory, before declarative memory. It's just that part of us that is protecting ourselves from overload.
Right. Right.
We can't be aware and remember everything that comes our way.
Well, one of the things I was talking with a client earlier today and talking to them about my exercise routine. So, virtually every morning, almost every morning, I do my workouts and I do things called farmer carries or, farmer walk, whatever. Anyway, you put weights in your hand, I put 15 pounds in on each and just walk around my place. And I do a loop of 10. But because it takes more than 7 seconds, almost a full minute to do a loop, I have to repeat the lap I'm on in my brain 2 or 3 times during the lap in order to retain lap count and advance. And I go, it is really hard to retain that information in like declarative memory if you don't reinforce it on that in that manner. You lose track or lose count because it takes almost a minute to do that. And as you said, declarative memory, or before it goes into declarative or working memory, it's like 7 seconds and then it starts erasing. Like here it is here, and it's moving along and you're erasing afterward. Anyway, my point being is that that is such a good chunk of information because I don't feel like I'm losing my ability to think because that is just normal. That's how it works at any age. So, that's the good news piece. So, then we're getting back to um, ask versus tell in this case, and you're turning it into a process. And asking is more likely going to be some kind of process model where people have to recall information.
So what does it do to the brain of the person when you're asking a question?
Well, the main thing there is um, the person who is asked that question, their brain gets sort of flushed from all the other stuff. Whereas a tell, you can ignore it and it's part of that 7 second thing. And you tend to ignore what that person is saying if they've gone on longer than 7 seconds.
So
Go ahead.
I had a kind of a little bit of a light bulb moment here and a query. I've had some times where a question will be asked, but it's not like directed towards me specific. I'm in a group, a question will get asked, and then all of a sudden they'll go, Tim, and immediately my brain goes, oh crap, what was the question? Is that part of even though I heard the question, but it wasn't directed at me, so it's kind of like
Initially, your brain didn't
Initially,
hook it because the name came afterwards.
yeah. And so I guess my thought, and it makes sense, is to direct the who or the person before asking the question is more effective because then they're paying attention. It opens their mind. The curiosity's
Got
flowing. Okay. Because yeah, I've had so many times where a question, and I've actually not to point the finger at you, Brent, but I've
He's doing it
noticed
anyway.
I've noticed sometimes on the BDE when a question's asked and then it's, hey Brent, that that seems to happen. That's what I'm noticing happens in your brain is it's kind of like, oh crap, what was the question? Because you're either writing or you're thinking or you're somewhere, and then all of a sudden when the question's asked again directed at you, you're like right on. Just an observation. Does that any thoughts on that, Brent, or something come up? Sorry, not to like spotlight you.
No, no, I would say that's yeah, because I'm doing something else. Like my focus is not necessarily on the question, or if it was on the question previous, I'm thinking about something that's processed different. So, I may not remember the question right away. My brain's it's going off somewhere else. Like it's thinking the thoughts and the thoughts are rolling in. So it's rolling off of there. And then sometimes if I'm doing something and the question's asked, then I I miss it.
Well, isn't
So it's talking.
that, yeah, sorry, we're getting into memory again. That was back in the very first one of these Mind Metal reboots where we got into that. So,
Well, leftovers are fair game there, so go for it.
yeah, so part of the leftovers here is, but that is actually literally in that declarative memory thing with that 7 second eraser following it. And if you don't mark the information in a way that another person will retain it for themselves by using their name and go, Tim, what about da 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 da, not da 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 da, Tim? You know, all of a sudden, what you've got is a different level of weight to this for that person's brain to pay attention to. More resources are pulled up when you use that person's name.
I was just thinking this works very similarly to, to Patty's question earlier of asking them, may I ask you a question? Engaging them first and asking a question kind of does the
Well,
same.
almost, but it does sort of. When you go, may I ask you a question? The engagement is with a question. And what questions do is it takes it, like, how many times, first of all, when somebody's telling you stuff, do you sort of just wipe it out and think about something else or take it on a tangent or go do whatever it is in your mind? Yeah, thank you, Shane. Me too. Like, and it doesn't really matter. So, it's there, it's available.
Mhm.
However, the issue being is when you ask a question, the brain, your brain, everybody's brain behaves differently. And that's where you now have to, for the most part, push everything down in priority and prioritize the question. If the question is meaty or substantial enough or meaningful enough. And we'll get that in the first few words of it. The problem is a lot of people stack questions. Two
I
or
caught-
three. Yeah, go for it. Are you just owning up to
No,
it?
I'm just confessing I am a question stacker.
Patty,
I have to work
have
to not question stack.
same. I caught myself tonight. Just about did it.
Okay. So that's the whole thing. So if you can de-stack your questions and not, because what happens is you put the brain of the person you're asking a question to into overwhelm. That's how come the rule of thumb with mind model questions are generally 5 to 7 words long, and try not to go over 7 words. Try to keep it between 5 and 7 words. Definitely under 10 words, or 10 words or less, I should say.
Keeps it to that one question and also within kind of those few seconds.
Exactly. So that then you've given the brain of the target something to say, oh, I can do this. That pushes out everything else and answers the question.
Cool.
As I'm gonna say, the pictures in my head, as earlier, Blair, you said, directing it causes the brain to bloom, which is great, right? A little bit confusion, curious, too far into brownout.
Correct.
And so that's the balance between, how are you asking the questions and the time and space for the response, either for yourself or the other person, so that you can balance between the two of those.
Absolutely true.
So with questions, and Jackie, you put this in the chat, we use questions without content. So how many of you find it pretty simple to ask questions that are less than 10 words long? Show of hands. Kind of. Situationally for me. Kind of, Brett.
I was going to say simple or easy because it's very simple, but I find it difficult to keep questions short. Just share.
I sometimes don't know how to put the sentence together until I start to talk. So it takes me a little longer.
Mhm.
I fall in that same category, Jane. I have found that a lot of times to start asking the question, and then I find that halfway through I rephrase to a more effective word flow. Works for me.
It does take practice. However, do we want to create a process model based on curiosity, or do we want a process model based only on information, which is, in that case, telling somebody through a question? So what's my intention? And if
How do
I
you
hold,
tell somebody with a question?
so
My brain went, what?
what specifically do you mean by that, Jane?
Becky and I had this conversation earlier. It was kind of funny.
Well, but Blair, masterfully done. What did you get, Jane, from what Blair just asked you? Blair, will you ask it again, please?
What specifically do you mean by that?
Exactly. So what specifically do you mean by that?
How is that telling somebody
What am I actually inferring? So
that I'm just not bright enough to figure out what the heck you're talking about?
you're right. It's a put down question.
So it's a passive aggressive thing, huh?
You got it. Very passive aggressive.
Okay.
So one of the things that you'll want to be able to do is figure out how to just fill people in and do it with an ask and then a fill in, such as, do you mind if I fill you in, Jane?
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Usually.
So telling you what's effective, is that more effective to you than asking you questions to find out if it's effective for you? Which is more effective?
It depends on the flow of the conversation.
And right now, which is it?
Because I'm in an information gathering mode, telling me is actually more effective because I'm already receptive to listening.
Exactly. And that's highly, highly normal too, by the way. But if you weren't, then that goes by the by. So there's no hard and fast rule. It's always contextual. That's my whole point. And I just filled you in on that one. I just told you. But that was to summarize your implied statements there of saying, oh, well, it depends what situation I'm in, which means it's just contextual. So we have to be aware of context and the content. That's it. Okay, makes sense. Good. Shane, go for it.
Well, like when I'm told something, I don't really retain it. Like if it's a situation or a situation that needs resolved, they're telling me that this needs to be done, this needs to be done. It just automatically reverts to how I would do it versus what they're telling me what to do. And so my mind, when they're telling me that, then my mind just immediately just like your 7-second race, there's like 3. Like, I don't care,
Sure.
I'm going to do it my way.
Okay. However, if Christie's life was in jeopardy and a doctor was telling you what to do you think you'd probably retain it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be, it would be locked in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to
And
say, in that situation, it would be locked in because emotions anchor
thank you. That's exactly where I
memory.
was going.
Big time. But the other part that anchors memory is because if you look at declarative memory as the what of it, procedural memory is the how of it. And when you put the what and the how together, that's what makes things sticky.
Yep.
So when someone's telling you in a life-saving situation, you're being told what to do, but you're also doing it at the moment. You're in process. That's also what makes my models so incredibly sticky in the memory, is it's always combining the what and the how. You're doing something. My models are not content-based only. You're always doing something with a mind model. all of them are process-based.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I think I understand how an application of that. If somebody tries to tell me directions and how to get there, if they just tell me, I'm clueless. But if I tell them, slow down, so I can picture each one of those steps. So, you know, if I'm going 7 blocks and I see the 7-Eleven, and I put a picture of a 7-Eleven there, I'm going to remember, okay, at the 7-Eleven, I'm turning right.
You're
Versus,
doing
hey,
it in your mind.
I have to process it as they tell me, or else I'm not going to get it.
But you're driving that route in your mind.
Yes, and that's my process, because if I don't
Yeah.
process it in my mind,
Mhm.
just somebody telling me directions on how to get someplace, it ain't happening.
So
That's
it's
the way that we
visualization
can,
of behavior.
yeah, we can call that howing.
Yeah.
That's what I call it.
Howing. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm howing as I do this.
Yeah, I'm figuring
That's
out how I
exactly
have to
what you
think
do.
about it, or just howing.
I like that, Roy. Howling.
This is a great example, Jane. That just, yeah, because basically what you shared and what Patty was sharing, combining that what and the how, that just brought everything clear for me as far as the difference between an effective tell and a ineffective tell, rather. So, I was going to ask Leslie, what's coming up for you, Leslie? Very thoughtful during that conversation.
What's what I've been wrapping my head around here is the declarative memory versus process memory that Patty's been talking about. These are concepts that I don't remember hearing in our discussions before. And yeah, when we had the memory session a couple of weeks ago, I was not here for that. So this is new. This is new information to me, and I'm processing it to make it stick.
I believe that was 343. Is that right,
Yeah, I
Patty?
think so.
Yep.
343.
Yes,
That-
343. I remember.
that's,
I have processed my memory to remember that we were in Banff that week.
that was a great episode when Patty went into the memory and how that works with us moving forward effectively, and that was a very effective episode. So yeah, for those of you who haven't had an opportunity, that's a good one to go back and review. And then also with those Blair Dunkley notes, that goes in depth into more of what Patty was talking about with those. So that's a good one to review if you haven't already. So
Yeah, I will.
And that actually sparks an idea for me too, like our process of remembering things. Sometimes we remember them one way. So, what would be the value in asking ourselves or others a question that we perceive that we already know the answer to? What would be the purpose in that or the value? Brent, what do you think? You're looking thoughtful.
So the purpose of asking a question that we perceive we already know the answer to. Maybe there's something we don't. We perceive we know the answer, but asking the question jogs the brain in the thought, and maybe something that comes up that you weren't thinking of, that you thought you thought you had the answer, but it was different. Something else came up. So it gets you thinking and turning. Curiosity gets that going. So maybe more comes up, or the answer you thought you knew was not the answer.
Well said. Anything else for you, Shane?
Well, when you asked Brent that question, I immediately went to, prove my position, prove my point. What if I'm asking a question that I already know the answer to? I'm kind of not being effective. I'm just kind of being like, I want you to see it my way, but I'm trying to be nice and ask you a question, but not sure how to rewire that.
I was gonna say I could see the other side of the coin of that as well. If you're making an assumption and you ask a question, technically you're not proving it positioning because you're actually you're getting past yourself and clarifying your assumption. And so then you're not proving, you're not positioning. So I could see how it depends on how you're approaching it, but I could see how either side of that would be either effective or ineffective.
And your question, Shane, I don't know how to get over it. I think the answer or an answer to test is what might happen if you ask the question? What does that then do for you?
Well, you have to test. You have to gather data points and test.
So if you're willing and curious enough to test, even if you're like, ooh, I really want to make my point right now, but I'm gonna give myself a timeout. Okay, if you can park yourself enough to ask the question, what does that then open up?
Curiosity. It opens up effective communication.
Yeah, I think it's natural tendency, and Blair, I'd love your perspective on this, that we're human beings and we like what we like when we like it, typically, right? We like to live in our own world.
Yep.
And so it's a practice at being effective and choosing to engage effectively for not just the moment, but long-term growth in how your relationships are and how your business goes.
Well, that's absolutely correct. However, we can attach one more word to effectively, and that's, or to effective, and start it off all with curiosity. I just go, I've lost count. I've done this thousands upon thousands of times. I ask my clients or students to just put the word curiosity in their mind, be curious, and just go curious. Okay, now evaluate it, or ask yourself, is that effective? From a standpoint of curiosity, what happens? And if that standpoint of curiosity is actually there, then all of a sudden it engages in a way that is usually different than if you're just asking yourself, is that effective? That will tend to be, from an externally verifiable point of view, more likely of a judgment. Just filling you guys in.
Yeah,
I did have.
Oh, go ahead, Shane.
I did have earlier on wrote down general versus specific. Then I did write 3 E's using curiosity.
Yep.
And, self-situation and other for me also comes up.
Yep.
Because when you're in a conversation with someone, another human being, what is the goal? Like thinking through, like, what's the intention behind this conversation anyways? Is my way, is my opinion relevant here? Is this really about me? Is this conversation about me right now?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it more effective for me to park myself and engage differently?
Mm-hmm.
So contextually as well, because most of those proven position things come from our own biases, our own belief systems, our own opinions, our own judgments. And so I love thinking about, where am I at right now? That question that we've
Right.
shared, identifying that, it doesn't have to take a lot of time, but how does that specifically affect how we communicate, our effectiveness in asking, telling, etc. Hey, Jackie, good to see your face. Good to have you on with us. Do you have a comment?
Yeah.
No?
Okay.
Oh, her mic isn't working.
Shoot.
I
good to
still
see.
want to know where she's at. Where are you in the world? Where in the world are you?
Sounds like where in the world is Carmen San Diego, but
I was just thinking of that. Where in the world is Jacqueline Wilson?
That'll date you, tell you how old you are.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh, wait, there's a proven position question again. So,
Oh, right.
right?
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Hey,
Jack,
Hey,
hear you. Excellent.
I know I unplugged these. Let me get in the kitchen. I'm in Chile.
Nice.
But I'll tell you where I went really special, Easter Island.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yes, it was amazing. Anyway, I'm still having technical problems, but I'm listening to everything, and it's very difficult to type on this format. Anyway, very interesting conversation this evening, guys. I mean, I don't even know where to begin to start because there's been so many levels of just everything that we've discussed.
Mhm.
And I must say that I need to maybe have some notes of some sort on the different stages of memory because when Patty was talking, I was like lost in space about it. Anyway, I don't know if they're, oh, they'll all be in my
I was going to say
learning
it's kind of
package.
neuro nerd territory.
Anyway, I don't want to take up time. I'm still listening.
Well, just because we have you on right now, Jacqueline, would you like to give us your wrap up?
Oh shit! I knew you were going to ask that. That's why I
You
was trying
don't
to get
have
off
to. I'm just asking.
now. Okay. Hmm. What? Well, it still all goes down to tone with yourself and others when whatever you're doing, whether you're sharing, filling in, telling, asking, or whatever. It all has a lot to do with the tone. The tone can really drive it very quickly. And the person who's receiving the information, data, whatever,
Absolutely.
can easily be turned off by the tone, even if it's a very genuine question or tell or share. So, yeah. So, yeah, 9 out of 10 for me tonight.
I'm so glad you joined us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Always
I'll
delightful.
be in Canada soon,
When do
Nice.
you come back?
the 27th of this month. So,
Okay.
Wow.
Cool.
I'll
Well,
still be
yeah.
having internet problems because I'm in the boonies. Never mind. Okay, guys, listen. I'm looking forward to all of your wrap ups. And if I get cut off again, great. I'll see you all next week.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Super.
Thanks, Jackie.
Great to see you, Jack.
Bye.
Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing. And with that, we are at the top of the hour. Want to transition? Are we at a place to transition to wrap up?
I think we are. If no one has any other questions or anything that
Any
you
thoughts?
specifically want to talk about with reference to the information.
Going once, going twice. I will hand it to you,
So
Patty.
to wrap up. Okay, thanks, Tim. Christy, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Of course. 9 for me. Ask versus tell. I learned a little bit more in depth too when we were doing coach training and realized that asking is more about influencing and telling has a lot to do with controlling. And it's a really good reminder also for me. Like around here, sometimes we get caught up in the heat of the moment and just telling on what needs to go next and whatnot. And then we wonder why we get grumpy when nobody really takes the initiative to seem to want to take that lead or that role or, what goes next or something. So we work, and I say we, I'm probably speaking probably for Shane, but I know that sometimes I gotta step back and ask more questions. Also, it was really great that Jackie had mentioned tone because that is a big thing. Shane and I was having a conversation today with a lot of the expansion stuff that we have going on. Being on the same page and very clear about things and very specific versus general is what the last 20 years has kind of have been. So I'm like, we got to be way more specific. And so that I'm clear and Shane would get a little bit into his telling mode and worked up. And I was like, your tone, and you're going to need to pause because otherwise I'm checked out and we're not going to get anywhere. So then we are able to ask where we're at. And then the other night we sat down and had a really nice conversation, and we did our own little wrap up about where we were within that conversation. And it was really great to see, I used percentages like it was a 9 for me tonight because we actually had the conversation, but I'm still only like at 20% with what the conversation was, but then that was a really good of like me asking him, where he's at, what his thoughts were for this and where just it was really great. And I realized we used ask versus tell a lot because I also, like Jane, you know, for instance, when we get back to haying, I'm on my tractor for like 2 to 3 months, but only in that time frame. So Shane, I need you to tell me again what all my levers are. I don't want the process. I don't want the questions. Just tell me. So, I mean, there's that. If I need to know something, I definitely will ask you. But so I just love this mind model and you know, anyway, tonight was really great. Thank you. Love y'all. Bye.
You brought up something really interesting that we didn't touch on tonight that your wrap up triggered in my memory. When you were talking about, using the tractor only for a certain season and needing to be told how to do it. And then you said, if I have a question, I will ask.
Yeah.
When you know that someone will ask questions for what they don't know, what does that do to the risk, trust, honesty triangle?
Like when I say to Shane, I will ask if I don't know.
When Shane trusts you to ask for what you don't know.
Well, that really brings alignment.
Yeah. And can he then risk giving you the tractor for haying?
Yes. Yes. Because
and you
it's
are
very
honest with what you need.
Mhm.
So the ability to ask a question, knowing that someone will ask for what they don't know instead of just making it up and, kind of
Sure.
fudging it.
Yeah.
It really impacts your ability to trust a person, to know that they're going to ask.
Yeah.
And I
And when you
know that
absolutely
Shane
know
trusts you a great deal.
that's right. When you absolutely know that they will ask, then the trust goes way up.
Yeah.
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 So I was just what your wrap up just triggered that in my memory. And I thought that's part of what works in your relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
So Shane,
And
would you like to get your 2 cents in?
Well, when Chrissy was going on there, I'm like, man, somebody put a quarter in her tonight. She's going on. But anyway, I love it. No, it's like a couple pages of notes I do have wrote down there at the end of Jacqueline's wrap up with the tone. And I really like Christy, the asking leads more into influence and telling is more into control. And I really like that. So, I mean, with those, I've said it before, the wrap ups, I learned just as much, if not more, than the actual episode itself. So, yeah, a solid 9.5 for me tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Leslie, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Certainly, thank you. Wow. A solid 9 for me tonight. I've already mentioned about the declarative memory versus positive process memory. That fit in very well. But the interesting enough, Patty, the thing that I highlighted tonight was, what would you like me to know that I would not know to ask? That's a powerful question.
It is.
And May I use that?
You may have it with my blessing.
Thank you. 9.5.
Excellent.
We'll
If
put
you
it up.
use it, Leslie, let me know how it works for you.
I will.
Okay, come back and let us know how it works for you if
Yeah.
you use the question.
Mhm.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane, would you like to give us your wrap up tonight?
Sure. I'm going to give it a 9.5 because I had an aha moment. When,
What was that?
well, as we were doing the wrap up and I'm trying to process some of the information that we were talking about earlier and bringing it all together. My daughter Jackie has this question for me all the time. She asks, is there a question in there? Because I have a habit of making a declaration about something with not realizing that I'm implying that she should do the next step. And she's at the point where it's like, if you don't ask me to do the next step, I'm not going to. So it's like, okay. And so that's her thing. So on one hand, learning the mind models is a good thing. On the other hand, she has learned to be a little bit more aggressive about making sure that the question is asked. So that's and so now it's made me, and where my circle thing went to, it's made me aware of the language pattern that I was brought up with. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Japanese culture, but one of the things that Japanese women are taught is that they're supposed to listen to what the husband is saying so she can figure out what it is he's wanting her to do without him having to ask her. That is a cultural thing.
Mhm.
And so, and without realizing that is what I learned until my daughter started saying, is there a question in there? So it's like, and so I
Interesting.
started to study it. So that whole declarative question thing, that's all like, to me, that's like new juicy stuff to chew on. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. I liked so I liked the whole in the opening when you said that you're when you ask a question, are you getting additional information? Are you getting clarification? That's where I kind of went through, but getting help or creating a connection. That was another little niblet that I went, oh yeah, that works. Okay, that's kind of cool because sometimes that really is part of the situation is that connection, that alignment. Establishing that alignment is a place to start from rather
Yeah.
than being way out in two hands don't show up on my camera. Two hands. Yeah, as soon as I do one hand, it goes away. Anyway, so yeah, thank you. It was I totally assumed, I admit this. Oh, yeah, ask versus tell. I've studied this before. This really is a deeper dive, and I'm grateful. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Good.
I'm glad it worked for you. I have to say, I really liked having you on camera most of the time tonight. It's been a
Oh,
while since you joined us on camera.
I'm more relaxed right now, so I'm not I'm not oh it's a little more pleasant to see me than seeing me
Yeah.
when I'm
And tax season is over.
so
I'm just saying it's
thank you.
good to have you back.
Yeah.
And that was a tell. So, Brent, would you like to participate and wrap up tonight?
Yes, I will participate. Yeah, I just say going a little deeper into tells a little more on that, like the situations where they can be effective and digging into that, seeing the context and the content where those would be effective and where they would be ineffective. And then the difference between filling in and sharing. So those, where the difference between those are. And as well, I know it was the name thing that Tim brought up, but I brought it up last Thursday when we had our call for coaching was something I noticed I was doing just instinctually as the same thing, asking questions, but somebody was off as if they were like on a small tangent, I would use the name. and it would bring it like snap back and then ask the question. So yeah, you said that, I was like, oh man, that's what I was brought up on Thursday, and I noticed I was doing that. So yeah. Yeah, thanks, Tim.
So how
Yeah,
does
but
it feel
that
to
does
catch
work.
yourself?
It is very effective.
Yes,
Yeah.
but how does it feel to catch yourself being effective?
Well, I say it's wonderful. Get
All
to see
right.
those things and then become more self-confident in this
Yeah,
in that area. So yeah.
absolutely. Well
Hmm.
done.
Yeah.
Shannon.
Is there? Oh,
Oh,
I would say I'll give it a 9 for me tonight. Yeah. That
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
was
cut
good.
you off.
No.
Shannon, would you like to participate in wrap up tonight?
Yeah, it's good to see everybody.
I cannot hear you. Can you dial yourself up?
Try me now.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's better.
Working now.
Okay. Cool. It's really good to see everyone. It's interesting how the dynamic of the group is actually very grounding. I came in and loud sounds tend to rattle my brain, and I had just been around loud sounds for the last 2 hours. So I was like, oh, and everybody's here. I thought that the difference, highlighting the difference between tell, fill in, and share was really interesting. And I also liked, and I don't remember the names of the terms you used, Mom, but the combination of putting the what and the how together, like how the
Yes.
brain naturally works towards
Mhm.
what's effective, and we're, just putting our names and labels to it. But
Mhm.
that was really interesting to me because one of the challenges that I've been learning about when I'm learning to teach well is not only how to decrease the filler words. There's obviously an element of telling when you're teaching someone. I'm telling them where I want them to stand and what I want them to do. But I've noticed, and just even from the very beginning, when I'm taking a class, when someone asks me a question, and then I get to notice in my own body, how does this work for me? What particular intensity am I choosing? What range of motion am I choosing? And so finding a way to weave really thoughtful but concise questions into my teaching, um, it's a fun thing to think about how I can ask while I'm telling and do both at the same time. And what result does one get and what result does the other get? And ultimately wanting to transfer agency over to them so they're learning how to scan themselves and to become more independent and safe, so they can take the things they're learning into functional movements in everyday life. So it was just through the lens of what I'm trying to do with my words now. It was really fun to think about the ask versus tell through that particular context. I love the question, Mom, that you asked. What would you like me to know that I would not know to ask? That was fabulous. But I also, Becky, some of your posts, there was one, I think, maybe 1 or 2 days ago that I read where you were asking yourself a question like, what do I know right now? That one, and I think that I have some, I think it's untapped treasure to practice asking myself questions more. And I did that ever since I read that post. I actually practiced randomly asking myself that. And it really, really, really has been helpful. And I mentioned that to someone tonight, and it hit them with all the force of a new idea. And it was the most fabulous, it can be an anchor to remind yourself of the things that you know, and to separate out real and reality, and just the power of how, what kind of questions help me to ask myself. And, when I hear a good one, to write it down and to practice it. So, and then you're bringing in that rest, trust, honesty at the end with Christy was really great too. So I love how just the content and the practice of coming kind of settles my brain, that the information, way back when it used to be a lot to process, and now it's grounding, it's anchoring. So it's a 8 for me tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. Tim, would you like to give us a wrap up tonight?
Up to. Tonight was a 9.5 for me. So there was a few light bulb moments that I can think of tonight. I want to say, great minds think alike, Brent, and ditto to what you shared. That was a light bulb moment for me tonight was, addressing the who and then asking the question. And how that is more effective than just the question and then attempting to dial people back in, and that it just works with engaging the mind. And so yeah, and then also the difference that Blair shared between the fill-in and the share. I was smashing those in my head, smushing those in my head, and so bringing clarity around that, because I've found that I use those interchangeably, and so having the clarity there was a light bulb moment for me tonight. The other thing that I loved was something that my lovely wife brought up of the self situate, when we're having conversations and stuff, the deeper dive into tell tonight was amazing. And pairing that with self situation and other, and what is the intention for whatever's going on right now, the conversation, and paying attention to how you're interplaying with that self situation and other there. Sometimes tells can be effective, and sometimes it's more effective to ask a question. It just really depends on the situation or the other that you're engaging with and what's going on in the moment. And to what Jacqueline brought up about the tone as well is a big piece of that interplay as well, and what the outcome initially will be, depending on what you want to, well, not what you want, but your desired outcome to be, and how that all interplays. And so I remember a lot of times looking at ask versus tell as kind of a black and white. It's better to ask and not so much to tell. But when you go into these deeper dives, I can see how it is in certain situations, and in with others in those certain situations, how it's more effective sometimes to tell. And so I just appreciated the deeper dive and the different look at this. So just a great night, and I really love getting together with everybody and hearing everybody's wrap up. I learned so much in the wrap up as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Becky, you like to give us your wrap up?
9.6, because I'm going to be readable tonight. Do a little different. Ask versus tell. Excuse me. Echoing a little bit about the focus on tell's not always being ineffective. Because for me personally, those questions, I ask myself questions and I tell myself a lot as well, but it's very strategic in asking, what do I know about this? Or what's the question I'm not asking to engage curiosity? But that effective dialogue can be helpful. Like, the answer to this. Okay, you know what you need to do. I'm telling myself, you know what you need to do because of the historical pieces. Sometimes I use it as the motivator for me to actually do something that I might otherwise avoid. And, really being aware of where I am and what's going on so that I can be as effective as I can for myself, but then also those that I'm interacting with as well. So that's for me tonight.
Well, it's wonderful to have you guys back. So,
Yep.
Blair, would you like to give us a wrap up tonight?
Absolutely. I like this ask versus tell. I like the deeper dive format too. It lets me expound on my thoughts that I've had over the decades of this stuff and just share what I am intending to hopefully influence others with. So anyway, so again, 9.5 tonight. And Patty, your recap, your direction, and Tim's guidance in getting some of the stuff out was highly effective. So good work. Well done. Thank you. And that's it for me tonight.
That's it for you tonight. Well, for me, I'm going to give it a 9.5 as well. Moment. I'm going to give it a 9.5 for me as well tonight. I really appreciated the little pieces that led to other little pieces tonight. There was a wonderful sort of flow in and out of the information that I enjoyed with everybody's participation. So thank you all. Let's see. Becky, would you be willing to take us out tonight?
Before you take us out, Becky, I had a question real quick, and I don't know if it's been shared, and maybe this is me. Anyway, I've had an opportunity to shout out all our new mind model coaches, and we've been gone the last couple weeks. So I wanted to take a quick opportunity and give a shout out to Brent and to Colin, who unfortunately is not with us tonight, but wanted to shout out to both Brent and Colin. They're our newest mind model coaches. And so we've got Shane now and Christy and Brent and Colin. And I don't think I'm missing. Yep, that's all of them. So anyway, I just wanted to shout out all the awesome new mind model coaches. It's so cool to have more coaches, and
Absolutely.
it's you can see their growth, and it's so
Yeah.
cool to see them. So anyway, I just wanted to shout that out real quick. I don't know if it's already been shouted out on the BDE, but
And never
um,
shout it out too much.
yeah, it's
And I
so cool to
appreciate
have
you
so many
bringing
new
it up.
mind model coaches. So anyway, congrats, guys.
Yeah,
All
thanks for bringing that up. I'll give it to you, Becky.
All right, you guys, thanks for joining us for the last 90 minutes. Again, this is some of the most impactful 90 minutes I think that anyone could add to their life if they're wanting to get more effective and learn how to behave differently to get the outcomes they're looking for. As a reminder, Blair's put together an amazing study guide where you can get all historical and ongoing notes for the BDE, the Blair Dunkley experience from episode 318 onward. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, if you caught it, we are going through a reboot. And so it's a great opportunity to get your hands on that as we talk about the basics, but we're also taking a little bit deeper. So if you're out there on YouTube, go to blairdunkley.com/BDE-insider notes. And again, if you're on YouTube, please make sure you comment, like, and subscribe and share. If there's somebody that you know that could benefit from being with us and learning these skill sets, please share, invite them to join us. We'd love to have them join us here on the Zoom as well. And again, we are here every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Mountain, 9 p.m. Eastern. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Yeah. Good night, all.